Today, we're in Cheshire, once the cornerstone of British salt production. And although salt is still mined in the area, the industry is nowhere near the size it once was.
This is the Lyre Saltworks at Marston, just north of Northwich. Today it stands derelict, having closed 20 years ago. But the history of salt extraction goes back centuries. Andrew Fielding is an expert on local salt. He's going to give me a glimpse into the birth of the age-old industry.
Hi, Andrew.
Hello.
What have we got here?
We're evaporating brine in a hearth to make salt crystals the way they would have done it in the Roman period.
So salt extraction goes right back to the Roman times?
Well, actually, it goes back before the Roman period. We know from archaeological remains that they were evaporating brine in the Bronze Age because we find the pottery containers that they made their salt in. By the Roman period, they're using lead salt pans over these long hearths.
And how does the process work?
Well, first of all, you need a brine spring, and that's made by rainwater percolating through the ground, and it finds a level of rock salt 150 feet below us. And as it flows over the top of the rock salt, it dissolves it to make the brine the salty water.
And what about salt in those times? Was it a valuable product then?
Well, it was, because the term soldier and the word salary comes from a salt root, so to be worth your weight in salt just shows how valuable it was.
And why was it that way?
Because once you lived in a settled civilization, then you needed to preserve food where you were. If you couldn't preserve food over the winter, then you stood the chance of starving to death.
So can I try some?
Yeah, please do.
Wow, that's good stuff. And around here, salt mining became a big business.
It did, yes. In 1670, the local salt proprietors got fed up of paying for coal to be brought in from St Helens, and they thought it'd been dug deep enough in Northwich that they would find their own coal, but they found the rock salt deposits instead. And so after that date, they were mining salt as well as pumping the brine.
And this used to be one of the factories?
That's right. Lyre Saltworks was a brine pumping site. Coming into pan house number 4. This was built about 1900.
This is amazing. So this is just like a massive version of what you're doing outside?
That's right. This is 30 foot long and 20 feet wide, and 4 men a shift would make over 5 tons of salt.
Goodness me. And how did the process work?
Well, there would be a stoker shoveling coal in the furnace underneath the salt pan, and then a team of lumpmen would be breaking the crystals to the side, skimming the salt into moulds or blocks, which would sit on the side of the pan, which they would then tip out onto this walkway or hurdles. And the salt blocks here would have an initial drying period, and then they'd be wheeled into the stove house, where the exhaust heat from under the salt pan would dry the blocks. They would spend 2 weeks in the stove house and then be lofted to the warehouse floor above.
And for what was quite a big business, why did it all close down?
They just couldn't compete against modern vacuum salt making. But also, this particular work specialised in exporting salt to Nigeria, and the civil war that took place there in 1986 coincided with Henry Thompson, the last owner, coming to retirement age.
These salt works could be a museum in a couple of years' time, but salt production hasn't completely evaporated here in Cheshire. There's still one working mine left, and they're keen to preserve the past.
Well, I'm an underground cinema, 500 feet underground, actually, at Winsford salt mine. And cinema is for invited guests like me who come to find out what goes on here. And the only film it shows is this one.
In the early days, miners would be lowered down the shaft in buckets. The vast caverns would be lit by candles, and the rock blasted with gunpowder.
This part of Cheshire became riddled with salt mines, and eventually just too much of the stuff was being produced. And at the end of the 19th century, this mine was closed. In the 1930s, it opened again with the advantage of electricity and some awfully big machinery. Brian, you've been working down this mine exactly 40 years now, haven't you? You must like it.
Yeah, I do. It's an experience. When I first came, it was something I never expected, and I just grew to love the place.
And you're still working like this dumper truck here. What's that doing here?
Yes, well, believe it or not, I've been here longer than that. I started in 68, and this came down around about 76, 77.
How did it get down here in the first place?
Well, this was brought... Yeah.
To the left, really?
Yeah, this was brought down in pieces. The back came down as one piece, the chassis came down in another piece, then all the others came down on pallets.
All the kit here assembled down a mine. Why is it all just dumped here now?
It costs more to take it out in time, effort, and the using of the shaft.
What's this thing here?
This was one of the biggest mistakes that ever happened. This is the blow knocks. The company decided in the late 50s, early 60s that they could come up with a machine that could actually dig the rock out, which you didn't need to blast.
Dig rather than blast?
Yes, and all it was a face shovel. And after about 2 hours, they realised it was a waste of time, so they just parked it up for posterity.
It's been here ever since?
Yes.
This is the very latest piece of equipment, a huge salt shifter, which also came down in kit form. It's one reason why the mine, which once employed hundreds of men, now has just 38 miners.